I stood in the middle of a crowded bar, the thumping bass of the music vibrating through the floor, laughter and clinking glasses swirling around me, but all I could hear was his voice, sharp, cold, slicing through the noise like a knife. "I know what you did, and she will too." My stomach lurched, a sickening drop like I'd just missed a step on a staircase. My ex's new boyfriend, Connor, this guy I barely knew, stood there with a smirk that made my skin crawl. He'd just dropped a bomb on me, one that threatened to blow up the fragile life I'd built. He knew my secret, the one I'd buried so deep I thought it was untouchable, a mistake from years ago I swore no one would ever uncover. The kind of thing that could ruin everything. My hand tightened around the sweaty beer bottle I was holding, the condensation slick against my palm as I tried to process what was happening. How the hell did he know? And what was he going to do with it? I was frozen, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. My mind raced back to that one night, years ago, when I made a choice I'd regretted ever since. A choice I'd locked away, convincing myself it was behind me. But now, here was Connor, this smug stranger who'd somehow dug it up, holding it over me like a loaded gun. The worst part. My ex, Lily, was standing just a few feet away, oblivious, her laughter cutting through the crowd as she chatted with her friends. She had no idea what was happening, no clue that her new boyfriend was threatening to unravel my life. If she found out. God, I couldn't even let myself think about it. The shame, the betrayal, she'd never look at me the same way again. Let me take you back a bit, so you can understand how I ended up in this nightmare. My name's Ethan, I'm 27, just a regular guy trying to keep my head above water. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everyone knows your business and mistakes stick to you like gum on a shoe. It was suffocating, that town, with its gossip and its expectations, so I moved to Chicago a few years ago to start over. New city, new job in marketing, new chance to be someone better. For the most part, it worked. I had a decent apartment, a small circle of friends, and until 6 months ago, a girlfriend, Lily. She was something else. Smart, funny, the kind of person who could walk into a room and make everyone feel a little brighter. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue, bonding over our terrible attempts at karaoke and a shared love for cheesy 90s movies. Before I knew it, we were spending every weekend together, cooking dinner in her tiny apartment, binge-watching shows, or just talking until 3 a.m. about nothing and everything. She was the first person who made me feel like I could be myself, no pretending, no walls. I didn't have to put on a front with her, and that felt like a miracle. But relationships aren't perfect, and neither was I. I've got my flaws, trust issues, a habit of overthinking everything, and Lily had her own struggles. She wanted more from me, emotionally, than I always knew how to give. She'd push me to open up, to talk about the stuff I kept buried, and sometimes I'd pull away instead. We'd fight, make up, fight again. It was a cycle we couldn't break, and eventually, it wore us down. 6 months ago, we called it quits. It wasn't dramatic, no screaming matches or slammed doors, just a quiet, mutual agreement that we weren't working. But it still gutted me. For weeks, I moped around, scrolling through her Instagram, wondering if I'd lost the best thing I'd ever had. Life moves on, though, doesn't it? I threw myself into work, started hitting the gym, tried to act like I was over it. I told myself I was fine, that I was moving forward. Then I heard through a friend that Lily had a new boyfriend, Connor. It stung, I won't lie, but I figured it was bound to happen. She was a catch, of course she'd move on. I didn't think much about him at first, just some faceless guy who'd taken my place. That is, until that night at the bar. It was a random Friday, and I was out with my buddy Jake at this trendy spot downtown, neon lights, overpriced cocktails, the kind of place that's too loud to have a real conversation. Jake was rambling about his new job, and I was half listening, nursing my beer, when I spotted her across the room. Lily. Her hair caught the light as she laughed, her smile as bright as ever, and for a second, my chest tightened with that old, familiar ache. I forced myself to look away, to focus on Jake, to act like seeing her didn't twist something inside me. Then I noticed him, Connor. Tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of guy who walks like he owns every room he's in. He was standing next to her, his arm draped casually around her waist, and I felt that sharp pang of jealousy. But I swallowed it down. I wasn't here to cause drama. I was over her. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. That's when he caught my eye. Connor. He looked right at me, his lips curling into a smirk that sent a chill down my spine. I figured he'd just nod or ignore me, awkward ex's new boyfriend stuff, but instead, he started walking over. I braced myself, expecting some forced small talk, maybe a handshake. But when he got close, he leaned in, his voice low and deliberate. I know what you did, and she will too. My mind went blank. My mouth went dry. I tried to laugh it off, to play it cool. What are you talking about? I said, but my voice cracked, betraying me. He didn't answer, just gave me that same knowing look, like he'd already won, and walked back to Lily. I stood there, my beer warm in my hand, my pulse hammering in my ears. How could he know? What did he know? And why was he coming at me like this? Let me tell you about the secret, because you're probably wondering what could be so bad that it had me unraveling in the middle of a bar. It's not what you might expect, not some grand crime or scandal, nothing you'd see on a true crime podcast. It's personal, the kind of thing that makes your stomach twist when you think about it late at night. Back when I was 19, I was in a rough spot. My parents were going through a nasty divorce, fighting over everything from the house to who got the dog. I was failing out of community college, barely showing up to classes, and I'd fallen in with a bad crowd, guys who partied too hard, who didn't care about consequences. One night, at a house party, I got blackout drunk. I don't even remember how it happened, but I ended up cheating on my girlfriend at the time. Her name was Sarah. Not Lily, Sarah was someone else, someone I dated in that small Ohio town. The cheating was bad enough, but what I did after was worse. When Sarah heard rumors, when she asked me about it, I lied. For weeks, I looked her in the eye and told her nothing happened. I made her feel like she was crazy for suspecting me, like she was the one with the problem. I gaslit her, plain and simple, because I was too much of a coward to own up to what I'd done. Eventually, someone else told her the truth, a friend who'd been at the party. When she confronted me, I didn't have the guts to come clean even then. I just stood there, watching her fall apart. The look in her eyes, hurt, betrayal, like I was a stranger, it's haunted me ever since. It was the first time I realized how much damage I could do to someone I cared about. After that, I swore I'd never be that guy again. I worked on myself, tried to grow up, to be better. When I met Lily years later, I was determined to be honest, to be someone she could trust. But I never told her about Sarah. I couldn't bring myself to admit it, to let her see that weak, selfish side of me. I buried it, locked it away, and convinced myself it was gone for good. Until Connor. That night at the bar, after he dropped that bombshell, I couldn't think straight. The rest of the night was a blur, Jake talking, music blaring, Lily laughing across the room. I kept glancing at her and Connor, watching them act like a normal couple, while my mind spun out of control. Was he bluffing? How could he know about Sarah? It was years ago, in a different town, a different life. I hadn't even talked to Sarah since we broke up. But the way he looked at me, that smug confidence in his eyes, told me he wasn't guessing. He had something real. I left the bar early, told Jake I wasn't feeling well, and went home to figure out what to do. But I had no answers, just a sinking feeling that my past was catching up to me. The next day, I got a text from an unknown number. It was Connor. Meet me at the coffee shop on 5th, 2 p.m. We need to talk. My heart sank. This wasn't a bluff, he wasn't letting this go. I thought about ignoring it, pretending it didn't happen, but what if that made it worse? What if he went straight to Lily? I had to know what he knew, what he wanted. So I went, my stomach in knots the whole way. When I got to the coffee shop, Connor was already there, sitting in the back with that same smug grin. He didn't waste time. I heard about you and Sarah, he said, stirring his coffee like we were just catching up. Small world, huh? Turns out, Sarah's cousin is a buddy of mine. He told me the whole story, how you broke her heart, lied to her face. Pretty messed up, Ethan. My face burned, a mix of shame and panic. He knew details, too many details. Dates, places, things I'd said to Sarah to cover my tracks. It was all true, and he had me cornered. I tried to play it off, to act like it didn't matter. So what? I said, my voice sharper than I meant. That was years ago. Why do you care? He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. I care because Lily deserves better than a guy like you sniffing around her life again. And if you don't want her to know what kind of person you really are, you're going to do exactly what I say. That moment in the coffee shop flipped my world upside down. Connor wasn't just threatening me, he was playing a game, and I was his pawn. He didn't tell me what he wanted right away, just left it vague, like he enjoyed watching me squirm. I'll be in touch, he said, then got up and left, leaving me with my cold coffee and a racing mind. The next few days were torture. I jumped every time my phone buzzed, expecting another text, another demand. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus at work. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lily's face, imagined her looking at me with the same disgust Sarah had all those years ago. I was spiraling, trapped by a mistake I thought I'd left behind. A week later, he texted again. Meet me at the park. 7 p.m. Don't be late. I wanted to blow it off, to tell him to go to hell, but the fear of him telling Lily was too much. I showed up, and there he was, sitting on a bench like he didn't have a care in the world. This time, he got to the point. I need a favor, he said, his tone casual, like he was asking me to grab him a beer. Nothing big. Just a little help with something. I pressed him, and he explained he was having issues with a coworker, some guy named Mark who was causing problems at his job. He wanted me to follow Mark, take pictures, see where he went after work. It sounded shady as hell, and I told him so. Why can't you do it yourself? I asked, my voice tight. He just shrugged, that smirk creeping back. Let's just say I don't want to get my hands dirty. Besides, you don't have a choice, do you? He was right. I didn't. So I did it. I followed Mark for a couple of days, feeling like a creep the whole time. I took pictures of him leaving his office, grabbing coffee, meeting some woman at a restaurant. Every click of my phone's camera made me hate myself a little more, but I kept going, driven by the fear of Connor exposing me. I sent him the photos, and he texted back a thumbs up emoji, like we were pals. But it didn't stop there. A few days later, he wanted more. Check his social media, he said. Find out who that woman is. Then it escalated to hack his email if you can. I put my foot down there. I wasn't a hacker, and I wasn't about to break the law for this guy. But every time I pushed back, he'd drop another hint about my secret, another reminder that he could destroy me with a single conversation. The worst part wasn't even the tasks, it was what they were doing to me. I was slipping back into that old version of myself, the one who lied, who manipulated, who did whatever it took to save his own skin. I hated it. I started pulling away from my friends, skipping plans, because I didn't want them to see how on edge I was. Jake kept asking if I was okay, noticing the bags under my eyes, the way I'd zone out mid-conversation. I brushed him off, said I was just stressed about work, but I could tell he didn't buy it. How could I tell him the truth? How do you explain that you're being blackmailed by your ex's new boyfriend over a mistake you made 8 years ago? Meanwhile, Lily kept showing up in my life, not on purpose, just by chance. I'd see her at the grocery store, her cart full of the same snacks we used to buy together. Or at a mutual friend's party, where she'd smile and say hi like nothing was wrong. Every time, I could barely meet her eyes. I was terrified she'd see right through me, that she'd sense the guilt eating me alive. And Connor? He was always there, lurking, watching me with that smirk, like he was enjoying every second of my misery. It was like he was everywhere, a shadow I couldn't shake. Then things took a darker turn. One night, Connor called me, not texted, called. His voice was different, tense, almost panicked. "You need to stop following Mark," he said. Things got complicated. I pressed him for details, but he wouldn't give me anything. Just told me to delete the photos, forget the whole thing. I should have felt relieved, but something about it felt wrong. Why was he so spooked? What had changed? Against my better judgment, I started digging. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to know what I'd gotten myself into. I looked up Mark online, checked his social media like Connor had asked. That's when I found it, a post from the woman he'd been meeting, Emily. She was his fiancée, according to her profile. But there was more. A comment from a mutual friend, expressing sympathy about what happened at work. I kept scrolling, piecing it together like a puzzle I didn't want to solve. Mark had been fired. And the timing? It lined up perfectly with when I'd sent Connor those photos. My stomach twisted. Had Connor used me to set this guy up? Was that why he'd been so secretive, so vague about what he wanted? I felt sick, not just because of what I'd done, but because I realized Connor wasn't going to stop. He'd keep pushing, keep manipulating, until he got whatever he was after. And I had no idea how far he was willing to go. I confronted him the next day, met him at some dive bar he picked out. It was dim, the kind of place where the floors are sticky and the air smells like cheap whiskey. "What did you do with those pictures?" I demanded, my voice shaking. He just laughed, said I was being paranoid, but I could see it in his eyes. He'd played me. He'd used my secret to turn me into his errand boy, and now someone else was paying the price. I wanted to punch him, to wipe that smirk off his face, but I knew that wouldn't fix anything. I was in too deep, and he still had the upper hand. That's when I decided I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't let him control me anymore. Walking away wasn't an option, not yet. I needed a plan, something to turn the tables. So I flipped the script. I started watching him. Not like he'd asked me to watch Mark, but smarter, more careful. I followed him after work one day, kept my distance, saw him meet up with some guy in a suit outside an office building. They looked serious, like they were arguing about something big. I took a picture, just in case, my hands shaking as I zoomed in with my phone. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I knew I needed leverage, something to make him back off. It took a week, but I found it. Connor wasn't as careful as he thought. That guy in the suit. He was a lawyer, and not the kind you call for a speeding ticket. I did some digging, public records, social media, a couple of late-night Google rabbit holes that left me bleary-eyed but determined. Turns out, Connor was mixed up in some shady business deal, something involving real estate and a lot of money changing hands under the table. It wasn't illegal enough to get him arrested, but it was messy enough to make him look bad. Really bad. Especially to someone like Lily, who valued honesty above everything else. I had my leverage. Now it was my turn to play the game. I texted Connor, told him to meet me at the same coffee shop where this whole nightmare started. When he showed up, he was cocky as ever, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes darted around the room. I slid my phone across the table, showed him the picture of him and the lawyer, and told him I knew what he was up to. His face went pale, the color draining like someone had pulled a plug. For the first time, he didn't have a comeback, no smug remark to throw at me. "Here's the deal," I said, keeping my voice steady even though my heart was racing. "You leave me alone, you leave Lily alone, and you never mention Sarah again. Or this picture, and everything I found, goes straight to her." He tried to play it off, called me a bluffer, but I could see the cracks in his armor. He knew I had him. We sat there in silence for a long minute, just staring at each other, the hum of the coffee shop fading into the background. Then he nodded, a small, defeated gesture, and got up and walked out. I haven't heard from him since. It's been a few weeks, and the silence feels like a victory, but it's a hollow one. Lily and we're not back together. I don't know if we ever will be. I saw her at a friend's birthday party not long after, and she came up to me, asked how I was doing. Her smile was the same, warm and genuine, and for a moment, I felt like the old Ethan, the one she used to love. I wanted to tell her everything, about Sarah, about Connor, about the mess I'd been in. I wanted to come clean, to finally be the honest guy she deserved. But I didn't. The words stuck in my throat, and I just smiled back, said I was fine. Maybe one day I'll tell her. For now, I'm just trying to be better, to live up to the version of myself she saw in me. Looking back, I'm not sure I did the right thing. I played dirty, just like Connor did. I stooped to his level, used his own tactics against him. Maybe that makes me no better than him. But sometimes, when your back's against the wall, when someone's holding your darkest secret over your head, you have to fight fire with fire. You have to protect what matters, even if it means getting your hands dirty. I don't know if I won or just survived, but I'm still here, still standing. What would you have done? If someone had your deepest, most shameful secret, would you fight back, or would you let it destroy you? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment, let me know. And if this story hit you, if it made you feel something, share it with someone who gets it. Some secrets are worth keeping, but some fights, they're worth having.